The ends of the earth, in the searing heat of Australia and the frozen wastes of Antarctica, life can be unbearable. The dinosaurs that ruled these lands were the toughest creatures that ever lived. How did they overcome the odds and survive life in the deep freeze? Australia, 100 million years ago. Adrift in the southern reaches, its jagged peaks are covered in snow. But in the lowlands, life is flourishing. On the banks of a primeval waterhole, a group of small dinosaurs gather peacefully to drink. Suddenly, the calm is broken. A new creature intrudes on the scene, bent on more than quenching its thirst. What happens next is chaos. In time, the waterhole would vanish, but not the scene of the crime. Today, the site is sheltered to protect it from the harsh conditions of the Australian outback. Called Lark Quarry, it's located near the town of Winton in central Queensland. Paleontologist Tony Thalborn believes this remote spot reveals the story of what happened in 10 seconds of time that tragic day. Preserved in rock, this is the largest dinosaur trackway on Earth. 3,300 footprints representing some 160 individuals were made in soft clay. They seem as fresh today as if the dinosaurs that left them passed this way only yesterday. For Thalborn, it's the footprints of one creature that tell the chilling tale.
What's interesting is that the first half of the trackway here shows long strides, the creature's walking along quite smartly. Halfway along, he suddenly slows down, the footprints become shallower. The creature's obviously becoming a bit more hesitant, a bit more careful and cautious as it approaches the waterhole down there. It's as if the creature is stalking something.
What it was stalking was two types of dinosaur. Tony has been able to identify them from the shape of their footprints. The first are from a small herd of plant eaters called Wintonopus.
It's a rather chubby foot, square at the back, 3 divergent toes, and it's basically herbivorous, if you like. It's a sort of dinosaurian sheep.
These narrow claw feet imprints belong to meat-eating dinosaurs christened Scartopus.
That's a predator, a scavenger, an insectivore, an opportunist, feeding on insects, eggs, plants, carrion, anything it could get its little hands and jaws around and swallow.
The two species drank side by side, unaware of the danger that lurked nearby. Then, a large meat-eating predator appears out of nowhere. The trackway reveals what happened next.
At least 160 small dinosaurs ran in the opposite direction over the tracks of that big predator. They're all running together, same direction, same time, over that predator's tracks. It looks very much as if that's an escape route, an emergency way out, and they are taking it.
But there was no way out for the small dinosaurs. Their only hope was to charge the carnivore, running straight into the gaping jaws of death. How many died that fateful day is unknown. But the footprints are dramatic proof that prehistoric monsters once lived and died in Australia's desolate outback. Dinosaurs Down Under comes as a big surprise. Over the past 100 years, only a handful of fossils have been discovered here, suggesting the land was too harsh and uninviting, even for a giant reptile. But at the Museum of Tropical Queensland in Townsville are the bones of a creature that proves Australia was once a dinosaur playground. Discovered in 1926 near the town of Roma, this is the hind leg of Australia's oldest known dinosaur, Rhedosaurus brownii. 36 feet long and 20 feet tall, Rhedosaurus lived 170 million years ago. Weighing 20 tons or more, it was a member of the sauropod family, the long-necked, long-tailed plant eaters. Paleontologist John Long of Perth University thinks Rhedosaurus was one of the first sauropods that ever evolved.
Rhedosaurus is perhaps the first of the truly large sauropod dinosaurs to appear anywhere in the southern hemisphere. And we believe it's a primitive dinosaur, mainly from the structure of the foot here.
These are called metatarsal bones. They support the animal's huge body by spreading its weight down through its clawed toes.
And these metatarsal bones in Rhedosaurus are splayed out like the foot of a lizard, whereas in the really large, gigantic sauropod dinosaurs that were to evolve later, these bones are all bunched up tightly to form a column to support the huge weight of the animal, similar to the way that the structure of an elephant's foot is today.
Rhedosaurus roamed the outback of Australia during the famous geological time period known as the Jurassic. Back then, the world was a very different place. Most of the continents were cemented into two giant land masses. One was located north of the equator, the other south. The southern continent was called Gondwana. Situated at the bottom and still joined together were Australia and Antarctica. The climate during the Jurassic was cool. Plant eaters like Rhedosaurus foraged for food in the cool shade of a forest of conifers and ferns. But where there were plant eaters, the meat eaters weren't far behind. A killer like no other wrought terror at the ends of the earth. Today, the dense forests of Gondwana are long since gone. Buried under a field of perpetual ice and snow, the landscape is bleak and lifeless. This is the modern continent of Antarctica, one of the world's last remaining frontiers. The size of North America and Mexico combined, 98% of Antarctica is covered in ice over a mile thick. Its rugged terrain and inaccessibility makes exploration difficult, if not impossible.
Australia and Antarctica are two of the most difficult places to find dinosaurs, two of the places that have been most reluctant to yield ideas of what kinds of animals were living on them. But there are places where clearly dinosaurs existed.
In 1991, a band of tough fossil hunters from the USA mounted a polar dinosaur hunt to prove just that. Team leader Bill Hammer of Augustana College in Illinois fondly recalls the hardship.
The warmest temperatures we ever had in the middle of the Antarctic summer were 25 below 0 Fahrenheit, and sometimes it was 10 or 15 degrees colder than that. But you learn to deal with it. It's fun to live in a tent at 25 below 0. It's a challenge, let me put it that way.
The team was camped 400 miles from the South Pole and 14,000 feet high on Mount Kirkpatrick. Working in extreme cold at this altitude, the human body only receives about 50% of its normal oxygen supply, so breathing can be difficult. Undaunted, the team braved this challenging environment for 4 long weeks in their search for dinosaurs. Finally, they struck gold. In an area only 15 feet wide and 3 feet thick, they uncovered the remains of Antarctica's first dinosaur.
We collected about 120 or 30 individual bones out of this site. Nearly all of the bones go to the skeleton of one animal.
24 feet long, it was a killer with serrated teeth and sharp claws. Called Cryolophosaurus, it's the only 2-legged meat eater ever found in Antarctica. Its name means frozen crested reptile, after the curious bone protruding from the top of its head. Hammer and his team think the crest had a specific purpose.
It's very ornamented, and it kind of comes to a little peak on the top, and it was used probably for some kind of a mating display or something like that. It was species recognition. It was not an offensive weapon. It's not designed that way.
The crest of Cryolophosaurus is unique. No other meat-eating dinosaur has ever been found with such ornamentation, suggesting this bizarre creature from the south was evolving in its own peculiar way. But while it was marching to its own drum, the world around it was changing. Cracks appeared in the Earth's crust, and Gondwana began to break up. During the Jurassic, 150 million years ago, Australia and Antarctica broke away from South America and Africa. Now one gigantic island, they slowly drifted further away from the equator towards the South Pole. For every 1 degree south they moved, temperatures fell by 2 or 3 degrees. And the further they headed into isolation, the weirder they would become.
If you want to evolve, if you want to get a continent to sprout lots of different kinds of animals, including dinosaurs, you need isolation. If you want a new species of Triceratops, of Brontosaurus, of hummingbird, you've got to take a small population, isolate it from its close kin, give it enough time to evolve its own adaptive signature, and then release it. Without isolation, you won't get new species.
For dinosaurs stranded in Antarctica and Australia, life would never be the same again. In the blistering cold of the polar regions, evolution was heating up. The dinosaurs of Australia and Antarctica were cast adrift.